Hey guys, Thomas the Salute Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, here to review the movie Extinction, which is a Netflix movie. And I saw it pop up, so I decided to give it a check out. This movie features Michael Pena, I hope I pronounced that last name right, and thus, as you can see, there was a spaceship and it kind of gained my interest. As I said. So, here we go. The movie begins with him, the main character, who he plays, Peter, narrating about not knowing the situation he's in, about things just moving about the daily lives of everything going on around him. That is, until a ship appears from the sky and starts to shoot people down. But Peter wakes up, assuming that this was a dream. His wife, Alice, kind of messes with him a bit, and then he proceeds to talk with his younger daughter, Lucy. And he also then afterwards talks to the older sister, or his older daughter in this case, Hannah. And I will say, for the sake of brevity, these two sibling characters kind of are here for one purpose, and it does get kind of annoying, but I'll get to that in just a bit. So anyways, he says goodbye to the daughters, and he says that he will promise to bring them to this park or something along those lines. So anyways, he makes his way to work, and his hand starts trembling as he's trying to fix this machine, and then it breaks in the process. His boss, David, checks on him, briefly. And while that's going on, his wife, Alice, does this meeting about, essentially just, like, building stuff, essentially. I assume his wife is like some sort of archetype or architect, sorry. Anyways, as Peter is returning home late, he sees a light in the sky and he kind of freaks out about it, and he's trying to get someone's attention, but they seem to just keep ignoring him and moving on and forward and just not really paying attention. But it cuts to him, like, fixing a light, and then this, like, protest happens about, like, something or other. So we kind of get the vibe of what this kind of movie is going to be about from there. Anyways, Peter kind of makes his way out, kind of runs away from the situation. And he's trying to, like, point at the light in the sky again, and then he starts looking at this telescope, so he decides to purchase it. So, he returns home, and while Alice is doing her drawing late at night, he decides that he's going to tell her the truth about what has been going on. And she says to go to see a doctor to talk about these dreams that are clearly interfering with his daily activities. But he has this another dream slash vision, I'll say at this point, about something else happening. So the next day comes about and he starts to talk to Lucy, trying to apologize, trying to fix her little toy monkey that she has. And it only says the same thing over and over again, which is akin to what I feel about the two daughter characters. I'll say that now, that throughout the movie they do kind of remain the same characters throughout the entire movie. And it does get a little bit annoying as the movie does go on, but I'll continue to get to that as I move along. So, anyways, Peter says that he will call the doctor indeed, or he did call the doctor, and he will go to see him, or them, I should say. But when he's there, at the office, the next few minutes or later, he talks to this other guy who also talks about having visions about the things in the sky. And when he hears this, he starts to think that something really is going on, and he gets another vision. So he decides to leave. And he tries to explain to his wife what is happening, that he wants to keep this because he believes it is a sign of something to come. So he looks through the telescope, and Peter sees one of his friends come by for this, like, party thing that Alice kind of put together. His pal's name is Sam. So, anyways, the party goes on, and, you know, Peter's just out and about for a little bit. And after the party and after most of the people leave, Sam is, like, right there next to him, and Peter sees something coming down from the sky, and he starts to see the ships actually coming down. So Alice joins him outside, and as soon as that happens, a bunch of the glass, since most of the buildings in this area are made of glass, all the glass shatters through multiple buildings. So Peter goes to get Lucy as Alice, or Hannah I should say, and Alice joins Lucy to, you know, have the family all set in one place because Hannah went somewhere else. So he goes with Sam, his pal, and they go throughout the building. And Peter is saved from some gunshots, and they see that these alien-like creatures are now on the ground, scoping out the area and taking out these people. However, him and his friend end up going to the elevator where they assume that the older sister Hannah went, and then end up finding her as well as Sam's daughter and one of Hannah's friends. Meanwhile, Alice is remaining under this little table with Lucy, and the ships that are outside are sort of scoping out inside with their little lights, and they don't manage to see them at that point in time. So Peter, again, seeing those ground troops killing more people, he carefully treads back to that area, to the place where he started, and they manage to get back inside and block the door. So Lucy, being the young, naive girl she is, goes to get her bear and starts crying. And again, that repetitive nature of just constantly crying is essentially what Lucy and Hannah's characters just end up being throughout the movie. And again, it does kind of get annoying after a bit. I mean, at first, yeah, I kind of understand. They're young. They, you know, they should be fearful. But I do think towards the end they could have gotten a little bit more rough, you know, into it, I guess. It's a weird way of putting it, but whatever. Anyways, the door starts to get shot through, and the alien-like creature that we see starts to make its way inside. So, you know, Peter attacks it, having a pretty easy outing with it, and joins Alice afterwards. And then Peter takes one of its guns. So, after they take the gun, Alice attempts to kill the creature, swinging at it repeatedly, and then, you know, they start to head out with the other group, which is Sam and his family. And they start to head upstairs, surprisingly. So they make their way to the roof, and Sam went on ahead, but so that leads to Peter almost attacking Sam, but then that, you know, they managed to avoid that escalation. So the two families now look outward from the ceiling, from the top floor, and they watch on as the continues throughout other buildings, and they see that there's this other group that is far from them, and then the ship sees them. One of the ships see them. This other group on one of the other roofs and blows it up, causing the main two families to sort of freak out. And then another machine goes to check on their roof, and they stay well hidden underneath to make sure the light doesn't see them. So afterwards, when the machine leaves, they go on this lift to make their way to the ground, but as it makes its way down, it starts to break, and they make their way back inside. So the creature that they attacked previously gets back up. They didn't manage to actually kill it, but they did knock it down for a while. So Peter's like messing with the gun still, trying to figure out how it works. And he mentions how they can go towards the office he worked at because it has this underground facility. And Alice mentions that they can use these tunnels to make their way to that area. And as they're explaining what their plan is going to be, an explosion happens right in the room that they are in. So Sam is knocked out towards the ground and killed. And then the machine sees the daughter and the mother clinging onto the roof, and then proceeds to take them out, leaving Peter's family to remain. So they make their way towards out of the building, and they almost get gunned down, but Peter manages to figure out how the gun works and starts shooting at these alien-like creatures. And the fight back begins as they make their way towards the ground floor and see these other fighters that are starting to make this little pocket resistance, but then the air patrol sees them and takes them out. So Peter's family proceeds onwards, and they make their way to the opening to the tunnels, and they manage to get in there just before the machine can blast at them because Lucy, once again, stopped and started crying and just stood there as this light started to look towards her, and then Alice had to get her in the process. So as they make their way in, they see that Alice got hurt in the process of doing all of that, and she is incapacitated for the moment. So we see that the creature from before is still tracking them into the tunnels. So Alice requires a short rest as the family makes their stop, and then that said creature attacks, and Peter sets off some steam and then starts beating him down and smashes the helmet inward. So once we see the creature's helmet be taken off, we get a surprise reveal, and I'm going to say spoilers at this point in time from this point forward, as I do believe that the things that I'm going to say now are going to be primarily spoiler based. So just heads up if you have not seen the movie. Again, spoilers up ahead. So it would appear that underneath the helmet is a humanoid figure. A human-shaped face, looks pretty human. And Peter's very confused by this, saying this human just be underneath this alien-like costume. And he forces this human to pick up his wife, and they make their way to another area. So they make their way to this the main building, the office building, and they make their way to Dave, his boss, and these other guys who seemed very military or equipped like military like guys at this point in time. So they go ahead and lock themselves up inside this facility. And the boss, Dave, says that they knew that this was actually going to happen for a really long time. And they don't get enough time to really explain what that meant, but there is going to be stuff later on that does explain what that meant, so don't worry about that quite yet. Anyway, the humanoid offers again to help the wife out, and Peter makes the two daughters go with David as he decides to stay with his wife, and the kids end up going towards this train. So Peter allows the human to help him out to do this operation. And the human keeps saying these things like, after looking at the body, he's like, like he's kind of surprised at what he's seeing. So Peter then looks at the organs, and he sees that they are all different. They are not the human organs that we are used to, and that kind of freaks him out, but he decides to continue regardless, that he's going to take a part of himself and give it to her, essentially. And a bit of a weird camera thing happens where it's like upside down, and there's all this movement. It's a little bit unnecessary, since not much is actually really happening. But we see a bunch of flashbacks or visions about this newscast that's going on, and we get this whole spiel about humans and being at war with these things called synthetics. Now, it is at this point in time that everything starts to click. We saw that Ellis had the different body parts. We saw that Peter had the different body parts when he took off the, ripped open himself. So 2 and 2 came together, and it was very clear that these two were synthetics. And that, again, the humans were at war with them. And he also gets another vision, or I should say flashback at this point, of how he actually met Alice at this office, and she was kind of pushed aside from the other side, and then he saw her and then went up to her and then just decided to help her out. And shows another protest happening. And at first, it did seem like they weren't going to explain how Peter forgot about this. And I was kind of upset they didn't explain it right away, but they do end up explaining it later on. So, at least they did that right. Anyways, it shows Peter and Alice getting up and beating down some of these humanoids, I should say at this point. I kept writing creatures, but they are humans that they are fighting, so... And it shows another flash again of them taking over the city, or taking the city back, I should say. And him going out with the boss and Ellis. And then it shows a weird moment that happens, and this is the one that probably makes the least sense out of all the flashbacks, with Hannah having one of her eyes taken out, and hers being seen as a synthetic as well. And the way she delivers her line, it sort of implies that the kids weren't theirs to begin with, and that she says that the two of them had to kill their parents, which again didn't really make a lot of sense. I think that could have used a bit of more clarification or some sort of rewrite there. Again, it's just very unclear what they meant by that. Like, did the parents adopt them and then they were just readopted by the synthetic parents, or I don't know, but regardless, after all these flashbacks, we finally get to see that his memory, that being Peter's, and as well as all of most of the residents in this world, most of them decided to get their memories wiped. And the boss that we saw from earlier says that he decided to keep his for this incoming attack that they knew was going to happen. So the human that helped them says that he feels that it's good to have the ability to remove memories like this, even though it was literally memories that saved the synthetics from probably an even worse fate, if anything. So I think that was a little bit, interesting, I guess? I don't know. So, the human explains how they lived in Mars, although that really doesn't explain why they look more like aliens, at least when they're suited up. And Alice actually wakes up for real. So the kids, the two daughters, ended up staying near the stairwell as the fight breaks out from above. And Peter gets the human's name, who is Miles, and again, Miles did not expect for it to be shooting out families, as he put it, and didn't want any more of this necessarily bloodshed and violence to continue on his end. So Peter and Alice move onwards, and they move through getting assistance from all the other synthetics, as the humans charge in with their little suits and make their way through. So Peter and Alice manage to make it across to a safer area where they manage to reunite with the kids at the bus that they take, or I should say train, since it's underground. But the humans try to catch up, but the train has a turret of some sort behind it and takes all of them out. And the family is reunited, and the train begins to set out. Again, taking out the remaining humans that were there. And the boss says to Peter as he drags him aside that the rest of the synthetics that are there will probably have to remember what they had lost in order to not feel as empty or, have any of those issues that Peter had, so that they could have a better, more efficient chance of having a fight out with the remaining humans, if that were to be the case. And the narration comes back from the beginning, and he says that he now understands who he is and what he is, and as they move into this grandiose view, as the train sort of makes its way into this forest-like area, the movie ends. So the movie does a pretty good job of explaining things in a pretty interesting order. I do believe that the acting was alright. I do like the twist of these, we assume from the beginning that they are humans, that we instead find out they are synthetics, and the humans were the ones that were attacking all along, but they had a more alien-like form to them when they first arrived. But it does have its issues, as I mentioned. The two daughters do get a little bit annoying with their constant crying, and they just don't really add much as the film goes on. I thought when we saw that specific flashback with the eye aspect that was going to come into a big deal, but again, that was a flashback, and when we see the daughter from the beginning, she doesn't seem to have any scarring of any kind, and it doesn't really ever come up. And yeah, it just sort of comes out of nowhere, and again, while it is a flashback, I do think like that was a little bit of wasted potential there. I think they could have delved a little bit deeper into like what their actual deal was. Other than that, I thought it was a pretty okay movie for, I thought it was okay. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. I think that the majority of it was pretty solid. I do think that the daughters could have been a little bit better handled there. And I think that they did an alright job. So that is my review of Extinction, and if you enjoyed this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out that link in the description. I'll head you over to my Patreon page, and any donations will be greatly appreciated. Until next time, everyone, bye-bye.